So I just wanted to start off to tell you a little bit about the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. We actually have 7 forest preserves now. On this map here, you can see 6. But our newest one is called Heron View. It's 98 acres, and it's actually between Sangamon River Forest Preserve and Lake of the Woods Forest Preserve, right on the river. And it's pretty small, 98 acres, and we actually acquired the land through a grant and a private donation. But we're very lucky. We actually do programming at all of our forest preserves. But the picture on the right-hand side is the Homer Lake Interpretive Center. And that is where Pam and I are based at, where environmental education is based at. We teach there, but we also teach throughout the forest preserves as well as throughout the county. If you get a chance, we're opening back up next week, Tuesday through Friday, 1 to 5. And so if you want to come out and say hi to us, see our exhibits, we have hands-on exhibits. And we also have live animals on display, reptiles and 1 catfish. So why should we learn about owls? Owls have actually been throughout human history. They've symbolized many different things, from the wise old owl to being foolish, a foolish owl. It's both feared and worshipped. And in our pop culture, you can see Harry Potter there with Hedwig, his owl, which is a snowy owl that we'll be talking about later. So owls are very important in the human culture. Now, one of the nicknames of owls is tigers of the sky, and they get that for many reasons, but one of those is because it's a raptor and it's a predator species. And so one owl can eat up to 1,000 mice in 1 year, but not just mice. Owls, depending on the species, can eat anything from amphibians, reptiles, birds, insects, even crayfish and fish. And in this picture here, you can see in the snow, there's actually an imprint of where an owl swooped down and got an animal. And it's kind of hard to tell what it got, but it definitely got it because those tracks don't keep continuing. Now, what we're going to go over in the next couple of slides is what makes them such good predators, especially at night. The first thing, which is really important, is camouflage. And one of the reasons they need a camouflage is, one, to stay away from predators, but also to hide from their prey animals. And so these owls are out during the daytime sleeping or trying to sleep. And the one on the left, this is a screech owl. You can see it blend really well with the bark. And then on this side, we have 2 great horned owls, one here and one right over here. And the coloration and the patterns on the owls actually make them really good at the camouflage. Now, vision. Owls actually have 30 times better vision than ours. One of those reasons, especially at night, so the nocturnal owls, which not all of them are nocturnal, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but they have really great night vision. Now, the 2 things that we have in our eyes are rods and cones. The cones help us see color, which we have more cones, while owls have more rods, and that allows them to see that black and white. So they see a lot better than us at nighttime. They also have those large forward-facing eyes. And if you look at the skull here, you see this socket. Owls can't move their eyes. Their eyes are stuck in one position. So what they need to do is they need to be able to move their head, rotate their head side to side and up to down. And they can do it really well. Now, on cartoons, you probably see owls that can spin their head all the way around. That's not true. They do have a backbone, a spine, so they can't do that. But they can rotate their head up to 270 degrees. So if you're looking at a clock and you look at the 12 o'clock and you follow that all the way around to the 10 o'clock, that's about how far they can turn their head, which I can tell you, I can't turn my head that far. Now, the next thing, they're hearing. Now, have you ever seen a dog when it hears something funny, it cocks its head to the side? The reason why it's doing that is it's trying to pinpoint that sound. It's probably putting one ear higher than the other. Owls don't need to do that because the holes for their ears, they have one ear up in the regular position where our ear would be, and then one ear lower on the opposite side near their cheek. And so that helps them pinpoint a sound. Even if they're way up in a tree, they can hear mice moving under the snow or leaf litter on the ground and be able to pinpoint where they're at. And then silent flight. So not only camouflage to help hide from the prey, but you also have to be able to sneak up on your prey. And owls have special feathers that you can see on the right-hand side here. They have these serrations that actually allow the air to go through it without making a lot of noise. So when they're flapping their wings, you can't actually hear it as much as you would hear if you've been around Canada geese. They make a lot of noise when they're flapping their wings. You can definitely hear it. But they also, the down feathers on owls actually help dampen the sound as well, which is closer to the body. And then finally, their talons. And this is what raptors are known for. They're very sharp talons, or their claws. They're very needle-like. And they use those to catch their prey, and then they squeeze them. They can actually crush them with the strength of their talons. And on this picture on the left, this barn owl, you can see when they have their 2 feet together and their toes spread out, it actually makes a web so they can completely grasp the animal and then crush it. All right, so the owl has caught its prey. So the owl on the right has a mouse, the owl on the left has a bird. Now, when they catch it, it's usually on the ground. Some can catch animals in the air, like a bird flying by, but most of the time they'll catch them on the ground. But they're not going to eat them on the ground. They actually have to take them up into an area that they're protected, because this is when they're most vulnerable for things like coyotes or other owls that might try to eat them. And so they're going to take their prey up into trees. And they actually do eat the whole thing. They might tear it into smaller pieces, but they will eat the fur, they will eat the bones, they'll eat the feathers of the bird, but they can't digest that. So what they do then is they actually produce owl pellets. So about 8 hours after they've eaten food, and it depends on the food, how long it takes to make the owl pellets, they actually collect that fur and feather and bones in their gizzard near their throat. And they compact it, and then they actually regurgitate it or throw it up. And I've actually been hit on the head with an owl pellet when I worked over at a Need a Purpose Nature Center in Urbana Park District. It's not as gross as you think. And it just bounced off my head. But you can actually dissect that, and scientists use that to see what owls are eating. Keep in mind, though, that owls are not the only ones that make pellets. Hawks, as well as vultures, will actually regurgitate the undigestible parts as well. But they're pretty cool. Now, if you've done a program or you do a future program in person with us, we do have owl pellets for people to dissect. But keep in mind that the owl pellets we provide are sanitized. If you find an owl pellet in the wild, you're more than welcome to dissect it. Just make sure you're wearing gloves and things like that, because they can carry diseases and bacteria that you wouldn't want to get on you. All right, so I don't know if you guys have noticed, but a lot of places do owl programs in the winter time, and there's a reason for that. Winter is a breeding and mating season for a lot of owls around here. The great horned owl, which is pictured here, lays eggs as early as late January. So you would actually be able to see their babies in March and April. And the picture on your right, David actually took that, and I believe that's at Homer Lake Forest Preserve. And we were able to see great horned owl babies. Was that last year, I believe? Time does not mean anything right now. So last year or the year before. And so it's a really good time. They're more territorial during this time. And so calling these birds, you might actually get a response. But of course, you can find owls year round. So where do you look? Now, if you're looking during the daytime, owls usually, most of the owls around here will be in the forest. We'll actually talk specifics owls later in the presentation. But one of the places to look is in cavities in trees, or dead trees that are still standing might have like cavities in them for the owls to hide. Sometimes you're literally just sitting on a branch, very still. And so, so those are the places to look for, but you don't actually look for the owl most of the time. You look for signs. First one is obviously the owl pellet. One of the best places to find owl pellets is under a pine tree. or coniferous trees still have their leaves in the winter time, and so it provides more cover for owls, and so that's usually where you'll find the owl pellets. And you'll find them on the ground near the base of the tree. Now, keep in mind, they're probably not going to be perfect, like freshly made. The rain and weather will affect them, and so they might be torn apart like this. But those are things to look for. And if you look up, you might actually find an owl still sitting in the tree. Another thing you can look for is whitewash, or the scat of the bird. And remember, many years ago, we were walking into the interpretive center at Homer Lake, and there was whitewash on one of our pine trees. And sure enough, right up was a little screech owl, and just sitting there. And we noticed because of the scat that was left on the side of the tree. Now, the last thing you can look for is the reaction of other birds. A lot of times you'll hear crows or other birds going crazy, making a lot of calls and diving into a tree. And if you go to that area and you kind of look around, usually what happens is there is an owl that's resting, and the other birds who are territorial as well are like, get out of here, go away. And so they give away the position of the owl. So those are some things that you can look for when going out to look for owls, especially during the daytime. Now, of course, this is not going to work at night, and we'll talk about what you can do at nighttime if you're wanting to find owls. All right, any questions at this point before we move on to specific owls of Illinois? Pam, do you have anything in the chat?
We just got one in. They say, but can't that happen normally with crows? I'm not quite sure what they're referring to. I was typing, so I don't know that I heard everything that you said. Do you know what they're referring to?
Crows, it could be about the dive bombing of the owls, one of the giveaways, and it's usually crows that are going crazy.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
They say, as in like cawing and stuff. Yeah. Crows communicate in a variety of ways. They're pretty smart birds, and so they flocks are often communicating with each other. When they're really like focused and there's a big mob of them all like cawing at the same time, it's definitely more intense than their more like day-to-day communication as a flock.
Oh.
Okay, so here's another new one. I've answered several in the chat, so if there's
excellent
questions, that you guys have, I can also continue to answer those in the chat. How has habitat fragmentation affected the owls? I'm not sure I know the answer to that one.
Well, I kind of go into that on, we're going to talk about 2 species in Illinois that are either endangered or threatened. I can talk about that during that section. And if I forget, Pam, remind me to bring that up.
Okay.
And there will be time for more questions at the end as well. I just wanted to make sure nobody had anything yet. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go on to specific owls of Illinois. Now, when we actually do what we call an owl prowl, we take people out at dusk, right when the sun is going down, and we actually call for owls. The 3 owls we call for are the screech owl, the barred owl, and the great horned owl. So we're going to go over those first, and you're actually going to get to hear the calls of these animals. So the great horned owl is the biggest owl that we have in Illinois. And it can get about 27 inches tall, but its wingspan can be almost 60 inches long, like wide. And they are found more in the wooded areas. They are called the great horned owl. Now remember, the ears are actually on the right here and down a little bit on the cheek of the owl, but these are called ear tufts. They're not actually ears, they're just feathers. And this is how the great horned owl got its name, because of those ear tufts. And it also has those bright yellow eyes. So if you see a really large owl that has this coloring, it's probably going to be a great horned owl. And as you can see on the map, they're found all over the place. They're very common. So let's listen to what a great horned owl sounds like. Oops. Sorry, clicked the wrong button. 1 second. There we go.
Great horned owl.
So I like to I hear things when I'm hearing certain owl calls, and this one, it sounds like who's awake, me too in my head. Let's play it again and see if you guys hear that. Oh, and this is some other calls that they can make. So not all, so owls actually have several different calls that they can do. Now, if you're actually going to call owls and you're going to use the 3 different calls, we've actually just used your phone with a Bluetooth speaker. Make sure you start with the smallest owl first and proceed up to the largest, because one of the main predators of owls are other owls. And so our next owl, which is the eastern screech owl, would be the smallest. So you want to start with that call first and then work your way up. So it goes screech owl, barred owl, great horned owl. Because if you call a great horned owl first, you're probably not going to have a screech owl if it's in the area make a sound, because it would give away its position. So the screech owl is actually the second smallest owl in Illinois. It only gets about 10 inches tall. The wingspan's 22 inches. So usually it's about twice as long as the width of their wings. And they are also found in forested areas. The interesting thing about eastern screech owls is they actually have 3 color morphs. And so that means that when they're born, they would be born one of 3 colors, and it has to do with genetics. There's really cool articles, research articles out about how this happens. So if you're into genetics, this is something that you would probably want to look up more information on. The most common 80% of the owls that you can find around here, the eastern screech owl, would be the gray morph. And then the eastern screech owl also comes in rufous, which is the second most common, and then brown morph, which there's actually not very many that you would find around here that are brown. And if you've ever gone to Anita Purvis Nature Center, they actually do they are a wildlife rehabilitator for screech owls, and so they actually do have owls over there you can see up close. Now, I actually really enjoy the eastern screech owl call, so here we go.
Eastern screech owl.
So they have a whinny that they do. It's kind of a quavering sound that they do, but it's very unique from all the other owls that you would have around here. Also keep in mind that sometimes you can actually hear owl calls during the day, especially the barred owl. And so sometimes you'll actually hear it when you're walking around your neighborhood or out in the forest preserve. So the next most common owl that you can find around here is the barred owl, and it's called that, B-A-R-R-E-D, because of the barred pattern that it has on its feathers. And this bird does not actually have ear tufts like the screech owl and the great horned owl, so it has the smooth head. And it would also be found in the forest. And sometimes you can actually hear it during the day. And this one is also year-round throughout the whole eastern United States up into Canada. And this is what this one sounds like.
Barred owl.
So if you read the description for this program, we said, which owl says, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So listen to this again and see if you can hear that. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? So that gives you, that's kind of funny. I don't know if you all hear that, but that's exactly what I hear every time I hear that owl. And that's one of the most common ones I hear when I'm out and about, out in the forested areas around here. Now, these next three are not as common as the first three, but we have seen them on forest preserve property. The first one is by far the absolute cutest one. It's also the smallest owl in Illinois. It's called the northern saw-whet. And it also lives in the forest. It does not have any ear tufts sticking up. And it's just, I think it looks like a little Ewok. And so right now you probably only see it in the winter time. It will actually go back up north for breeding season. But there have been some spotted at Homer Lake Forest Preserve. And this also has a very unique call that it does.
Northern Saw-Whet Owl.
So it literally makes tooting sounds. And as you can see, it progressively got louder and faster. It's amazing how they can constantly do that. And I was very lucky. A couple of years ago, I live out in the country outside of Villa Grove, and I was standing outside letting my dog out, and I actually heard one of these off in the distance close to the Emberall River. It took me a little bit to figure out what was happening, but it was one of the northern saw-whet owls. The long-eared owl gets its name because of the ear tufts are a lot longer than the great horned owl. And this one is also only found during the winter. It does breed between February and July up in Canada. It is a smaller version of the great horned owl, and this owl is actually in kind of the alarm position. It knew somebody was watching it, and so they get very erect and they stick their ear tufts way up, and it helps if it was actually up near like the bark of the tree. It would actually help camouflage it more. It just made it more prevalent or prominent in this picture. And this is what the long-eared owl sounds like.
Long-eared owl.
So it does a very low moaning sound, but it does do the classic hoot that you would hear from an owl. Now, the last one that's not as common in Illinois is the snowy owl, and which Harry Potter fans would be very familiar with. And we've been very lucky this year. There was actually one in between, actually over by Sydney, in between Sydney and Longview, for quite a while, which usually once people, find it, it usually smartens up and flies away. But this one didn't really care about all the people that were checking it out. It only comes down during the winter, and it has a really interesting migration. So they are found in the Arctic area, and there's a lot of research on why they come this far south, and usually it's for food. And unlike all the other birds that we've been seeing, this one is actually one that you would find out in open cornfields or soybean fields. And so the snowy owl that we saw was actually on my drive home. It was hanging out on a telephone pole right by the edge of the road. And then one of the times it was actually just out in the field sitting on the ground. And also, unlike the other birds, this one is actually diurnal. It actually hunts during the day. And so that's why we were able to see it, was because it was getting ready to go out and hunt. And so they're mostly white. The markings on them can vary by age, sex, season, things like that. But you can imagine when it snowed, how hard it would be to see this owl if it's sitting on the ground out in a field in a pile of snow. And this is what the snowy owl sounds like. So it's that grunting sound. There's the other bird in the background, but they actually don't make a lot of noise. And then when they do, it's just that kind of grunting sound that they do. Now we do have two threatened or endangered species in Illinois of owls. The first one is the barn owl, but I'm very happy to say that the last time we did this presentation, this owl was endangered. It is now moved up to threatened, which means it's doing a lot better. It still has work to do. But one of the reasons why this owl and the other owl are affected is because of habitat loss. So this one actually would live in barns or in areas like that, like in the fields or like old cavities and trees. That kind of habitat, like cavities and trees, usually they don't exist. It's old growth trees that you would find, and a lot of our trees around here are younger, so they don't have a chance to get the cavities. Or we cut them down because they might be dead snags that could be potentially a hazard. And so having these areas has threatened them. But another thing is one of the main diets of a lot of these owls are rodents, mice and rats. And especially the barn owl, if it's hanging out around a barn, but we don't want rats or mice in our barns, we might put out poison. Well, if an owl eats the poison mouse, it would also poison the owl. And so if you don't need to use rodenticides, then it could be helpful for those owls as well and other animals. But they have a very unique call. I will warn you, it is kind of scary sounding. So don't be shocked if you hear it. And here we go.
Barn owl.
So they actually shriek. They make a huge shrieking sound. And there are a lot of stories about farmers going out into their barns, you know, at dusk or even in the morning and opening up the barn and having this white-faced bird fly down and make that sound. And it really scared people. But they're actually very beautiful. They're not very big. They only get about 20 inches tall. And they have the heart-shaped face. They have that white heart-shaped face. And so something to look out for. And then the last but not least is the short-eared owl. It gets its name because its ear tufts are really small. You can't even see them in this picture. They are endangered. They are found in open fields, so those corn and soybean fields or marshes. They do prefer to hunt by day and might stay in the same area for a while. And so this bird, we actually were very lucky. If you're not familiar with a listserv called Bird Notes, we can give you more information about that. It actually lets you know of birds that people are seeing in their area. And was it last year, Pam? Year before? There were 5 short-eared owls out in Vermilion County, out in a cornfield in the middle of nowhere. And I went with my co-worker and we actually were playing the call of this bird and heard it call back. And that was the only way we spotted it because they were pretty far away. But they got pretty close and we got to see them and they stayed close to the ground, but they're a really beautiful owl. And this is what we heard when we called them.
Short-eared owl.
So I think this bird sounds kind of like a cross between a cat and a dog or something imitating a cat or a dog. It does not sound like what you'd think an owl would sound like. But yes, they are pretty cute. All right. right, so what can we do for owls? One of the things that happens now and then is you might find an injured owl. We are very lucky that we have the U of I Wildlife Clinic, and we actually have several owl rehabilitators in our area. You would have to look this up for your area as well. You can just search what to do if I found an injured owl. If you live around here, you would have to actually transport the owl yourself, which can be dangerous. So you might want to find someone that can help with that. Another thing you can do if you live in the right habitat, in this upper right-hand corner picture, this is an owl nest box. You can actually buy these or you can make them yourself. And of course, the dimensions that you would need would depend on the species of the owl and where you would need to place it. But because their habitat, those cavities in the trees, barns, things like that, depending on the owl, they don't have that now. And so we need to put up these artificial structures for them. Another thing is if you have trees that are dead on your property and they're not hazardous, leave them up. Owls could use them. Lots of species of animals can use them, including bats. Bats roost in old trees as well. And then keeping in mind poison. If you do put out bait stations and stuff for animals, be aware of where you're putting it. You just have to be very careful that wild animals aren't eating the animals that are actually getting poisoned. So now let's say you want to go out. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we're not able to do our owl prowl where we take you out and call for owls, but you can do this on your own. You could do it in town. People actually have told me in Champaign-Urbana that they have owls that they hear in their neighborhood. You can come out to the Forest Preserve, Homer Lake. If you park at our north boat ramp, it gives you 24 access by foot. And even right over there, calling for owls right from the parking lot would be good. But things to remember is always quiet voices. And being loud and is not going to make the owls want to call back. Be aware of cars and roadways. You have to be very careful. So if you're inside the Forest Preserve and you're on a trail, that's a lot better than standing on the road. People aren't going to be able to see you because the best time to call for owls is at dusk. And then don't overplay call recordings. So what we normally do is we start with the Eastern Screech Owl. We'll play that for a couple minutes. We'll play it for, like 10, 15 seconds. Then we'll listen, play it again, and we'll kind of walk around when we're doing this. And then if we don't hear anything, we move on to the next owl, which would be the barred owl, and do that for a little bit. We don't play it very loud. Remember, they have really good hearing, and we don't play it for a very long time. And then we finish with the great horned owl. That leads me to the patience. Sometimes, some people think we are magical and can call animals to us when we're doing our programs, and that would be amazing if we could do that. But unfortunately, we've done programs before where we have not heard one single owl, and unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. They're either not there or they know and they don't want to make the call. But you might find other cool things. We've heard coyotes howling at night, and other animals out there as well. So just remember to be patient. And then, and the park closed from sunset to sunrise picture here is just to remind you, don't trespass. There are private property that, that you might not be able to go on. And just be aware of closing times if you are going to certain forest preserves. Or like if there is 24-hour access at certain places. All right, I went through that pretty quickly, and I know Pam, I could see her typing. I was watching Pam. And so Pam, do you have any questions that you saved that you want to share?
Most of the questions I was able to get to. When you played the barn owl call, someone chatted that it scared their bunny rabbit in the room.
Oh
the instincts of the rabbit must be like
Right.
still there.
Oh
right?
no, I know
Right.
that's not good.
Yep. We've had
And that would be a predator of the rabbit. Yes,
yep, for sure.
definitely.
We've had a few folks saying that they do have owl boxes in their backyard, so that was really
Excellent.
cool. Someone asked how do you keep squirrels out of them, and yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And then we figured out that the owls could probably just evict the squirrels if they really needed.
That's
So,
true.
yeah. Someone said, doesn't that become an owl buffet? I'm like, oh yeah, I suppose it could. Yeah, for sure. Let's see, got a new question in. Where was the place you said had rehabbed screech owls?
The rehabbing of owls.
Yeah.
So normally what you do is, so in this area, University of Illinois Wildlife Clinic would be the ones that would actually be able to fix the injured owl. But then it would probably need to be rehabilitated before it's released out in wild, or it might not be able to be released. And so there are actually a list of places that, places and people that will actually rehab specifically owls. And for example, Anita Purvis Nature Center, Judy Miller there is trained on rehabilitating eastern screech owls, but they can only take so many. And so if you Google, owl rehabilitators with your specific location, usually you can find a list. But we're very lucky because of the U of I having really great resources in our area.
Yeah, the Wildlife Medical Clinic is a great resource for this area.
Yes.
Yeah, someone asked, is it true that owls cannot fly in the rain? And I've never heard that before, but yeah, they can definitely fly in the rain. I hadn't really heard that rumor.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Oh, someone said an owl call scared their cat too. Poor thing.
I was wondering if that would happen.
Yeah. That owls will prey on cats and small mammals like that. So especially a great horned owl for sure. They're big enough to do that. So
Yeah, to
keep your
carry
cats
them off.
inside.
Yeah.
Someone came across a great horned owl that was road killed. Yeah, it's illegal to hold any sort of bird feathers, bird parts, unless you have a permit for that, and that's through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So just so you know, like nature centers like ours, we have permits to hold, feathers and bird things and that sort of thing. So there are some rules as far as that's concerned. So yeah, that's the answer to that. So technically, yeah, it would be considered illegal for just a regular person to have that without a permit. One person said, if I want to visit some owls, can I go to a rehab center? That might depend on the rehab center. It just depends if they allow visitors or if they have birds on display, or sometimes it might be just an individual who's doing it in their home and they don't take visitors. So I would just contact that rehab place and see what they might allow or not.
Yes, and if you're affiliated with an organization, like for example, the Forest Preserve, when we do certain programs, we actually have the Wildlife Clinic can bring out some of their birds of prey to programs and do talks on them, or just have them there as a station. And we will be doing that in the future. But it's pretty cool to see these animals, and these are the birds that they've taken in that could not be re-released out into the wild, and it could be because they're missing an eye and they're unable to hunt on their own, or their wing, they're not able to fly because of a broken wing that wasn't able to be fixed, and so they actually continue the care throughout the rest of the animal's life.
Yeah, there's any more questions that anyone has for us this evening? Oh, no.
I do want to let you guys know that this program will be uploaded to YouTube in the next week. So if you want to revisit it or if you want to share it with anybody, it will be up on our YouTube page, and our link is below, youtube.com/CCFPD. If you have any further questions, comments, or concerns about this program, Jennifer Wick is our public program specialist, and her email address is there. And so please send her any questions that you have. And then also down is our handles for our social media. So we're on Facebook. We have a specific one for the Homer Lake Interpretive Center, but we also have a broad one for the whole Forest Preserve District. And then we have an Instagram account for the Forest Preserve as well, which has some really awesome pictures that are not just taken by us, but visitors to the Forest Preserve as well.
Someone asked, do fake owls attract or scare real owls? And I'm not totally sure. The fake owls are there to scare away other kinds of birds or to keep things away from your garden, that sort of thing. But I have not come across anyone who said that they either attracted or scared them away. I could see maybe like one of the big fake owls scaring away like a smaller screech owl or a Saw-Whet owl, but I don't know if it would attract another great horned owl.
Right. I'm wondering during mating season if it would see that and go, ooh, look at that owl.
I know, and then kind of figure it out like, oh, this one is very unresponsive.
Right. That is a really good question. I can tell you that the owls that we've used in our garden usually don't last very long. Somehow the animals work together to attack it, and then we just have the head of the owl left. So we've not had success with fake owls keeping the critters out of our garden.
Do the crows attack it, or do other critters attack it?
No, it seems to be like squirrels and things like that, because we put it up on a post around the fence. And the only thing I can think of is the squirrels, because the rabbits wouldn't be able to get to them.
Right.
And the crows don't seem to care, but who knows? Well, I want to thank you guys so much for attending this today. And if you have any further questions, please, you can also put questions on our Facebook page as well, or email them to Jennifer at jwick@ccfpd.org. And I hope you're able to get out and about in nature in the next, couple of days, because it's supposed to be beautiful and warm. It is a little muddy. But it is really nice out, and so hopefully we're on a trend to nice weather into the spring. And thank you, Pam, for all your work with the chat, because I see there's 99 comments.
99. Can we get to 100? Oh, there we go. We got to 100. Excellent.
Nice. Impressive. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Hi, Jermaine.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Stacy.
Hey.
It was very good. I enjoyed it.
Yay. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Jermaine.
Good to see your faces.
Yay. Soon you'll see us in person.
Well, hey.